Well, I really want to help you guys. A lot of times, I want to help you improve your herd, improve your hunt. Again, they both go hand in hand. And but at the same time, I think to look forward, we need to look back. And I think this is a great time of the year to actually grade and be pretty harsh on your deer season and look at some factors that help you really assess how your deer season went, grade your efforts, grade your habitat efforts, grade your hunting efforts, how that all wraps together. And, one of the ways to grade that, this is something that this was a pretty good season, and I'm still hunting because there's also a couple nice bucks around in Minnesota, and there are in Wisconsin, but I'm tagged out. But I have a couple tags in Minnesota, and I would like to shoot another buck that I have my eyes on, a couple of them. But these are some from this year right here. And we'll talk about, these aren't the only grades to a good season or a couple nice sets of antlers, but they help. There's a big portion of it because you can do a bad job with your deer hunting. We'll talk about some ways to identify that and still shoot a random buck that comes through. And that's what you need to be very critical on. You could just go by, well, we shot some big bucks, so we had a great season. But there's some other factors you need to consider outside of just this right here, because this is a season of a lifetime for a lot of people. I would say that this is in my top 3 seasons of all time, and I've really been happy. And I don't feel I'm being greedy, but I have a couple other really nice bucks in Minnesota, and we have a CWD hunt at the end of the month here. It's for 3 days, and I'm going to go out. I'm hoping they're around, but regardless, I'm happy knowing the season that I had and being able to just sit back and enjoy some scenery, even during bad weather or something. I'm looking forward to sitting out those days and reflecting, and this is a time to reflect for you and to ultimately grade your season. Number one, really good way to do that is this is something that it's not a scientific analysis of your land. It's just an observation that I've seen on my own parcels and when I talk to clients times 100 every year. So I have a big luxury where I can actually interview clients, talk to them. How many does and fawns are you seeing? How many bucks are you seeing? How many antlered bucks are you seeing? How many antlered bucks total? How often are you seeing those bucks? We dive into these questions. They're quick questions, but when you can get a sampling of 100 clients that are dedicated enough to have you come out, and obviously there's reasons they have you come out, then you get a really good analysis of what's going on, times 1,126 states since 2005. So a really cool thing. And this is one of those analysis. This is a factor I like to really consider, is typically the number of fawns and does that you see in combination. Of course, some of those are button bucks, but I don't really care about that. I'm just talking does and fawns. You're going to see a similar number of bucks or greater. So I go to properties literally where they're seeing 30 does and fawns on a daily basis, and they're only seeing 12 antlered bucks. They've created such an enormous doe population problem on their land. There's really no room left over for young bucks, old bucks, any kind of buck, except for a few younger bucks, middle age here, kind of hanging out. But it's not a herd you're actually building other than a doe herd, and you're repelling mature bucks. Someone else, typically in that situation a mile away, has all the older bucks, and that happens a lot. So a grade I want you to think about is if you have bucks on your land, 15, 12, how many does and fawns do you have? That number should be similar. I would say, and it should be even more slanted towards bucks. And again, those bucks, these aren't the number of bucks you have in your land. These are a number of bucks that focus on your land at some point during the season. A portion of those are going to be on your land here and there pretty regularly. Another portion you're going to get 1 or 2 pictures of, 3 pictures of, and they're gone. Another portion is going to be there for a week here or there, another weekend here, a couple days here and there throughout the season. They're consistently around, but inconsistently on your land for days or weeks at a time, just sporadic. So you add up all those bucks, you're really looking at a snapshot of the entire neighborhood, not just your land. Does and fawns, however, are on your land. They have very short movements unless you're spooking them all over the place. So they stay on your land. And so that's why that ratio brings to the attention of how many bucks are in the area compared to the does and fawns you have. Again, like in Wisconsin, I can honestly say that we probably get pictures of twice as many bucks, antlered bucks, that we do does. That would be the same in Minnesota here. Now I can say there's probably properties around here, even close to me, a mile or 2 miles away, depending on how they hunt, depending on what kind of food they have, depending on when they have their food. If they have too much in the summer, not enough in the fall. They're creating a doe problem because they put too many does and fawns on their land during the summer that stay during the fall. They always stick around. Then there's properties around here, they're probably seeing it just in reverse. They're seeing 3 times as many does as antler bucks as they have, or twice as many does as antler bucks they have. So thinking about it, should be at least the same, but definitely better on most well-managed properties where you have more bucks that you see throughout the season than the total sum of the number of does and fawns on your property. If it's skewed, where you're seeing twice as many does and fawns and bucks, give yourself an F, because there's a lot of work to be done. Number 2, increase in the numbers. When you get into the season, let's say this is August. This is why a lot of scientific models use August as a census time. Incredibly poor census time. No, if you have 5,000 acres where a lot of these censuses are being completed and where science is basically dealing with, because science doesn't really deal with small parcels much at all, then that's not a bad time because you have a captive herd, sometimes even in a fence. But you're actually taking a sample from that and comparing it year to year. That might be relevant in an area where you have a captive herd, but even then, not a lot of mature bucks. So what they do is they figure out, well, there's a certain number of mature bucks that won't be there, so there's a factor for that. Throw that all out the window. August, September is a pivot point on a small parcel, meaning up to 1,000 acres, but definitely 40 acres. Half my clients are 60 acres or less. My average is probably 110. This last week was above average. I actually had 6 parcels out of 8 that I went to in the last 9 days in December. My normal December client trip were 160 to 200 acres. That's not common at all. I had 140 and 180. 180 acre parcel, 140. So the average was a little bit higher for this last weekend, and that's not typical. I get over into Michigan, I go to a lot of smaller properties in Ohio. Ohio will be in January, Michigan in February. Pivot point, meaning, here's that point, August, September. Great parcels go like this through December with their deer numbers. Bad parcels go like that. So that number in August, September on small parcels means absolutely nothing, because if you're doing a great job, your numbers will increase into December. If you're doing a bad job, they will steadily decrease. That bad job could be habitat in the form of cover and food, fall cover, fall food, or it could just simply be the way you hunt. Most of the time it's both. But again, an F if your numbers are going like this during those times and those months during the season. Number 3, fewer bucks in August versus November. Bucks are the lowest hole in the bucket. And we have another video that we shot today, but if you have a lot of bucks in the summer, you're not going to have a lot of bucks in the fall, unless you have big parcels, unless there's an unusual circumstance. There's always an exception to the rule. But 90% of the time, if you have a lot of bucks in the fall, especially in the form of mature bucks, they're not going to be there in the summer. They're or in the fall. They're usually about 1.5 miles apart. So I want to see you notice a lot more bucks as the season increases into November especially, and then December. That way you're the herd influencer in there. You can't be a herd influencer if you have all the bucks in the summer and none of the fall. That doesn't mean anything. You didn't do anything. You didn't accomplish anything. You get an F. So really grade yourself hard on this one. You need to have more bucks in October, more in November, up into December. Should peak out sometime in November and December on your land, and that'll tell you you're doing a great job. Number 4, daylight mature buck ratio. What I mean by that is something that's really cool to look at. Notice the number of mature buck pictures you get. And mature is all relative. You know, these 2 bucks right here might be 5 years old, 4 years old, 6 years old. I don't really know, but they're mature. In another area, the best buck might be 3 years old or 2 years old. Another area might be 6 or 7. But bottom line is, when you're looking at that older age class of bucks, whatever that is in your area, how many pictures do you have in and around daylight? Could be an hour after dark. Could be at dark. It could be right before it gets dark. It could be in the morning when it's gray light, an hour before. But bottom line is, how many mature buck pictures do you get in and around shooting hours with an hour of daylight versus middle of the night, versus 2 hours after dark, 2 hours before daylight? Look at that ratio. It should be at least 1 to 1, right around there. Or something close anyways. On good properties, you find you don't see a lot of bucks during the night because the food sources, the afternoon food sources, and the cover are positioned such that deer are leaving your property and going somewhere else at night, and letting those deer consume someone else's resources of food and cover during the night. And there are exceptions, of course, when you get into big wilderness area, big wood areas. your food might be it for miles around. So those deer just camp out all night. They hit there in the afternoon. They're even there during the middle of the day. So instead of 5 feedings spread out a couple times in their bedding areas, once in a big food source, a couple times in your neighbors, it's 5 out of 5 on your land because there's no other choices. But in most situations, most circumstances, most deer habitat, you can send them somewhere else after dark. It's called an inside-out property. They live in your property on the inside, they work to the outside, and then they leave. Not the flip side. I go to a lot of properties where a tree stands on the outside of the property waiting for deer to come back in. That's a very bad situation, and you're not going to have a lot of daylight pictures. In that case, your ratio is going to be very poor. So a great way to give yourself a grade. And number 5, I throw this in there. We talked about this on another video. Some people won't like this, but if your taxidermy bill is higher than your habitat expenditure, you're probably doing a good job. I've seen people that spend $20,000 a year on habitat improvements and don't shoot a buck. Now, maybe that's what they enjoy doing. Maybe that's where they like spending their money. But good deer seasons dictate good deer hunting results. Doesn't mean you don't miss. I've had plenty of my mess ups the last couple of years, especially last year. That was a bad one, 2020. But you do mess up, but it's hunting opportunity. If you have great herd, if you have great habitat, you'll have a great hunt. It's hard to have one without the other. You can have great habitat, but that doesn't mean you're going to have a good herd or hunt. I see a lot of people spend a lot of money on great habitat. Great meaning they made good improvements, but not great as far as how it all fits together in the overall design of their parcel. Your taxidermy bill, you should have a taxidermy bill if you care about stuff like that. And if you don't, you at least have a full freezer. If you have an empty freezer and you're not paying any taxidermy bills, probably didn't do very well. And it doesn't matter how much you spent on habitat and how many bucks you saw running around here and there. A good design, a good deer season, a good hunting property dictates and expects, and not only that, it demands results. How'd you do this last season? Here are 5 ways to grade. Even if you don't believe in this last 5, believe in the other ones, you could still get these 4. And that's what I was saying when it comes to these right here, in these guys, these type of bucks, you know, you can get these bucks. They can randomly come through. Always ask yourself why. Why did this happen? Is this something that's repeatable? Is this a pattern that's repeatable? Can I consistently shoot better bucks that are in the area? This one is both. I love these bucks. This one though, one right here, he's heavy. Freak. Look at those bases. Just awesome deer. But do you understand why I said in the beginning, you could have a really high taxidermy bill and you could spend a lot of money. But if your ratio of daylight mature buck pictures is bad, meaning you're getting a lot in the middle of the night and not very many other ones during the daylight. If you have more bucks in August than you do in November, if your numbers are increasing, your numbers of deer overall, does, fawns, bucks, young bucks, old bucks, are decreasing as the season progresses. And finally, if you have a lot of does and fawns compared to the overall number of antlered bucks on your property, 1.5, 2 times as much or worse, does and fawns to bucks, then you have a lot of work to do. That's why I said, even if you have a good taxidermy bill, even if your freezer's full, if you're not grading yourself heavy on these first 4 and you're not getting good grades in those areas, then the season could be a failure. So it's not just about these antlers right here. There's a lot of other factors to consider, and when you consider those, guess what? You truly are a deer manager. You truly are improving your deer hunt. Because if you don't do these things, then you're just going season to season. Again, if you always do what you've always done, you always get what you had. There's a lot of people doing that from season to season to season. I want to see you improve your hunt, improve your herd, do your best job with the property you have and the resources. That overall goal can differ so much between people. I have landowners that are dirt bike tracks on their property. They're shooting ducks, they're going pheasant hunting. We all have multiple use, but you can always do your best, and that's what this channel is about. I hope you do your best in this off season so that you can have a great herd and a great hunt this next fall. Folks, I want to make sure you check out my web class video series, whether it's how to design your food plot program or how to design your property in general. And we have a new one coming out that'll be how to hunt the rut. But these bucks back here are a testament. Some of these bucks go back to 93. They're even in different states I urge you to check out those web classes that you can help yourself, help your land, help your hunt. The link is in the description. And also for those that have tried them out, I encourage you to offer some feedback in the comments below. Thank you.